Maimer, Perik Test Zion. Right, so we're going to 20, and we're going to finish the whole Basi Lgani. We started off already by saying that the Orient Suf that's Lamaila, right, there's a huge difference between that light and the light which is called Lamata Mata. It's one light, but it's a two-directional, as we've been saying. And the idea is that the Orient Suf, they said it's infinitely high. It's not in the category of Hamsh or Giloy, right? And this is what we said, that you are higher than all high things, hidden beyond all hidden things. So what do we mean by that? So we said there's kind of, it's a similar statement we said before regarding that it says, Ein Kadosh K'Hashem. We said a very similar thing previously in the Maimer. It says there's nothing as Kadosh as Hashem. There's like Kadeshim in the Seder Ishtalshalus. There's a lot of things that are called Kadosh, but Ein Kadosh K'Hashem. Nothing is Kadosh K'Hashem. And it's the same thing we're saying here. You're hidden by all hidden things. So what's the idea? Let's say you're in the world of Yetzirah, the light of Bria is hidden to you because you don't have the vessels to pick up on it, right? So that's like a whole, in fact, that's what we say specifically with Yetzirah and Bria, where you say Bore Yotzer Or, Uvore Choshech. Yotzer is Yetzirah, Bore Bria, right? Everybody's a Kabbalist every morning, they didn't know it. So why do we say, what are you talking about Bria and Yetzirah? And also, what's the story? It says Yotzer Or, Yetzirah is light, Bore Bria is darkness. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Yetzirah is a lower world. So why is that called light and Bria is called darkness? You following the question? And the answer is because even though Bria is filled with light, but compared to Yetzirah, the light of Bria cannot be seen. It's too high to be seen. It's like basically vibrating at a level that just does not show itself, right? But if you happen to be in the world of Bria, it is light. And what would be considered dark to you? The world of Atzilus, because it's a light which is beyond your kelim. So as you go lower and lower in a certain sense, then you're able to see light because that which is above is considered beyond your ability to see. But nonetheless, so that would be called hidden. The world of Bria is called hidden, or it's called kadosh. Kadosh means muvdal, separated from the lower world. But there's many kadoshim in the Seder Ishtalshalus, meaning say no matter where you are, there's something that's going to be kadosh from you, right? But where you are, you can see light in your own sense. But there's ein kadosh k'Hashem. There's nothing kadosh k'Hashem. There's a certain level which is not in that whole order of high and low. And it says you're hidden from all hidden things, even these things which are considered hidden from other things, you're hidden from them. It means there's a certain level of light which is beyond the whole concept of being seen, period, right? It's not just hidden because it's a little bit higher than the vessels that you particularly have. In essence, no vessels whatsoever can contain this. It doesn't matter how high of a world you are, it's essentially hidden. Right, so this is called the Orient Suf that's Lamaila Adin Kates. It's infinitely high, and that's the meaning of it. It doesn't come to revelation. It's not even in the category of revelation. And okay, that's what we sort of said at the end of the last class. Whereas the light, which is Lamata Mata, right, it's coming down, it's still very high. Right, we're talking about the Or Ein Sof, infinite light, but at least this is the direction of light that's coming towards revelation. Right, and this is basically Hashem's, in his essence, the concept of revelation in his essence, which means that in the essence itself, here, let's take it from inside so I'm not just reading all by myself here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down. It starts with the word who. You see that? Everyone on the ball there?
Yep.
Moshe, you looking in? Okay, so it says, we're right now talking about the light that's Lamata Mata. It is, he says, Al Kol Panim. Sorry, let's go one more line before, or there's a period, so we can start at the beginning of a sentence. Right, it says, Masha Or Ein Sof Lamata Mata. You see that? This is the Or Ein Sof is Lamata Mata is going down, Ad Ein Tachlis, infinitely. Who begeder Giloy Al Kol Panim. It's at least in the category of revelation. Vu Hashayach Elo Olamos. And that's the light which would be relevant in some way to the world, because that which can never be seen, right? It's essentially concealed. Remember, the metaphor for this is that the king stockpiles in his treasure house certain treasures that no eye ever sees. It's like not for public consumption. It's not for the sake of the kingdom even. It just sort of sits there in the back. So whereas it comes to the light, on the other hand, which is relevant for the world, this is the Orient Suf that's coming down. It shows itself, it can show itself at least. V'chlaluso hu b'chinas gilui ba'atzmus. So in general, this is a revelation aspect of his essence. Perush, meaning what? The ba'atzmuso gufa hu b'chinas gilui ba'atzmu k'biyacho. This is that. No, we didn't do this yet. So in his essence, this is the level of revealed to himself. We're going to see in a certain sense, there's aspects of Hashem which are even within himself not revealed. What does that mean? It doesn't mean Hashem's like not in possession of them. It means that even in the essence itself, there's certain things that he's sort of like set aside for being light and revealed, and there's certain things that are set aside that are just him, and it's not in the capability of revelation because they're so essentially one with him. It's almost like we have these same powers in ourselves. In other words, there's certain parts of you that are revealed to you, right? You're aware of your own thoughts. You're aware of your own emotions. You can be aware of your own intellect. You can, in other words, like a person can be musical. He experiences that he has like certain powers, right? But then there's certain hidden powers, which is like, it's like your underlying motivations for things that you might yourself not be aware of. Even though you're not aware of them, they're still able to go to a psychologist and get aware of them. So there's hidden things which are at least in the realm of being revealed to you. But there's certain deep essential things that might be sort of like part of like previous gilgulim in your like essence of your soul that maybe your entire life they don't ever come to really show themselves to you because it's just sort of your essence. It's what produces everything else, but it itself stays sort of in this contracted essential form. And so too it is above. There's like God himself. And that's not like for public consumption. It's not even known, so to speak, inside of Hashem because it's not a lack on Hashem's part. It just goes on this notion of something so essential that it's not relevant to be revealed. It's coming out is already in a certain sense a step down. And there's aspects of Hashem which don't come out. However, what goes infinitely high, right? Even in his essence, they're not in a state of gilui. They're completely closed off and hidden. The base in yanim elu. Let's bring further clarity to this. It's going to bring a few mashalim which help us out because it's very deep stuff. He says these two things, masha orin tov lamay lamayla adin kates v'lamata mata adin tachlis, that the orin tov goes in both directions infinitely. Heim base bechinas makif. Another way of this is referred to in Chassidus is called two levels of makif. What does makif mean? Encompassing. What does encompassing mean? Is this mine, right?
Circulating?
It is encompassing, circulating, surrounding. These are all true definitions. But what does it actually mean, right? If you say there's a makif light, you say it encompasses you, it encircles you, it surrounds you. What are you actually saying? You're saying
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere, but you cannot perceive it. The point is something which is called makif is like all the analogies we've been giving. It means it's out of the purview of your tool set. Like your eyes can't pick up on something that can't be seen. Your brain can't pick up on something which is beyond comprehension, right? So there's levels of reality which we don't have the tool set to pick up on. So we're like unconscious of these levels of reality. And even though they're everywhere, right? Even though they're mamash in this room and they're flowing through you, it's called makif. That's what we would use the phrase makif, right? But now we're going to understand there's two levels of makif. Makif de or yashar, makif de or choser. Right? There's something called the straight light and the returning light. Right? And it's very much like what we've been saying in terms of the two directional concept of Hashem. Right? The straight light means it's coming down to you, straight in your direction. Right? The returning light means it's going away. It's returning, so to speak, into itself. Like I gave you the analogy, and he's going to give it again in the mimer itself, about what does it mean a returning light inside of your own, so to speak, wisdom. The wisdom that I'm going to sort of prepare the lesson with and come in here and try and share with you. That's called straight light. It's coming directly from me to you, right? And it's going outward. Or choser, returning light, represents, like we said in the last class, when the teacher is going to go into a state of deep meditation and contemplation to try and resolve a question that comes up in class, right? If a question came up in class, that means, and the Rav didn't have an immediate answer for it, that means it wasn't part of his lesson plan. Someone found something that he did not prepare for. It doesn't mean he doesn't know it. But all of a sudden, instead of going directionally forward and like producing revelation to the outside, he has to now go inward and start seeking inside of his own essence and go the other way, right? So this is the idea of what's called or choser. He's like returning inside to his own source, but it's not. But it's an aspect of intellect as well. It's just going in the opposite direction. So he says the makif to or yasher hu makif hakarov. So there's another terminology for these two types of makif. One, the straight light is called the makif hakarov. Here, you want to pass this out to the new students in class. Welcome to class. Makif hakarov, right? The closer makif. And why do we call it the closer makif? Hu begeder gilui al kol panim. It's at least in the realm of revelation. In other words, it can be revealed even though it's presently not. So there could be certain things, as we're going to soon see, that are beyond your scope. You don't presently have in your toolbox the ability to perceive them, but they're close to you. Right? It's kind of like what I was saying before, like you can go to a psychologist and you can come to find out your underlying motivations, which might not have been sitting on the surface of your decision making for 20 years. But if you go and do a little digging, you can realize that there are certain things that were close, but at that point in your life, they were unknown as to why you were doing things, right? It's called a makif hakarov. And the makif de orchozer, the other makif, which is called the returning light, is called makif harachok. It's the distant makif, the einu begeder gilui klal, which means it's distant, means to say no matter how deep you're going to dig, no matter how many layers you uncover, it's distant from you and you won't find it. It's sort of like it's not tailor-made for you to even discover. And when I say tailor-made, that brings me to an analogy, which he doesn't bring here, but it's usually brought when we discuss karov and rachok. What is the three levels? There's something called food, clothing, and shelter. Right? Food, we're gonna deal with in a second. It's not a makif, right? Food is what's called an or panimi. Panimi is the opposite of makif. Panimi means inside. Makif, as he said, means surrounding. Panimi is that which your tool set can pick up on, right? That which is totally, you're aware of. Like food, you eat it, you digest it, it goes inside your body, and it becomes one with you, and you can sort of gain a certain dominance of this, either knowledge or whatever it is. But then there's clothing. Clothing, unlike food, does not go inside the body. It surrounds the body. And therefore, all throughout the Torah, the concept of begadim, bigdei kahuna, clothing in general, is a metaphor for makif light, that which does not get consumed. And that's why it says clothing is always a little bit more expensive than food as well, because it's a higher, like, priced light. You know what I'm saying? It's more divine, the makif light, because it's beyond the vessels. However, albeit that it's beyond the vessels, it's still tailor-made to the vessels, right? It doesn't come inside of you, you don't digest it, you get nourished from it, but there's a hat, and there's a shirt, and there's shoes, and there's pants, and a belt. All these things are made to be in conformity with the body. And that's an analogy for hidden things, but hidden things which are sort of designed to eventually be revealed, because they're sort of close to you, and you can sort of make out that they're there, and it's a type of divine light which is presently makif, but theoretically could be understood, and it's at least responsible and close to that light which is graspable. It's kind of like what we were saying before about the different levels of kadeshim in the Seder Ishtalshus. Even though you don't perceive it, someone else can perceive it. In other words, it's available to be seen. It's light that shines at very least, even though it might not be presently shining to you because you can't pick up on it yet, but it's shining to somebody. Whereas then you have the level of the house, right? The idea of the bais, which is again much more expensive than clothing, right, is the idea of the makif harachok. Why we call it the makif harachok? Because everybody walks into the same house and it doesn't care if you're big, small, skinny, or fat, right? It has no shaykhs whatsoever to what's going on in the panimi, right? It's just way beyond you, and it's representing a level of divinity which is called far away from you, because it doesn't even take you into account. Your clothes take you into account. You're small, medium, or large, or a Moshe size. Yes. But either way, it's thinking of you, right? And because it's thinking of you, that means you're what's called tov face makom, you sort of take place in its domain, which means it's not really that much different than from the Orpanimi, even though it's be'ein aro, but they speak the same language. The Bais doesn't know from your size, shape, it doesn't know from your world, if you're a chokhmah, you're a bina, right? So this is called a Makif Rojo, going inside. The Yuvan Inyan Zeh Basaga. Now this, he says, if you want to understand this, right, we can understand this by in grasping Kamal Derech Mashal Harav, by way of analogy, Harav Shumashpia Seichel Talmido. That he gives over the intellect to his students. He Mashim is Kabbalah Makabel. So this is much like what we just said, that which the student can actually understand, right? Hainu Chelek HaSeichel V'Asvara Shat Talmid Makabel, which is that part of the intellect which the student actually internalizes. And he's like, he can go and take it home and think about it and tell his friend and give over the Devar Torah because he got it. Hu b'chinas or panimi. So this is not a makif, right? This is the part which you digest. This is like food. You internalized it. This sits very well inside of the vessels of the makabel. Your mind can grasp it. Your heart can feel it. Right? Absolute settling with the concept. You get it. Now you're busy with the Rav, and certain things that he just said you totally understood, but the depth of the seichel, right? The Rav might have been giving you an analogy from a mimer, which he picked up from a whole, book that he read, which basically like summarized this thing, which what he gave over to you do understand, but the way that he understands it. And like the place that he's bringing this muscle from was from like a 75-page like iyun into a concept. He comes out with something that's bite-sized and understandable, but what's sort of fueling his expression of that statement was something much, much deeper, which albeit might be contained inside of that muscle, but when you get the muscle, you understand the muscle the way you understand the muscle. You don't understand the muscle the way he understands the muscle, because he just learned 75 pages of deep Kabbalah and brought out that muscle. So when he sees these same words, it's filled with unbelievable amounts of information and light and explanations that he can sit there for hours and hours. But nonetheless, doesn't mean you don't understand it. You got the muscle. You're going to go tell your mom at the Shabbos table. It's just that the depth of what's going on with the Rav, you didn't pick up on that yet. That's what he says. The the depth of the intellect which the student does not receive, and nishar b'bechinas makif. Right? That's called makif. It's a whole realm of the topic which you have not yet internalized. It's makif al sichlo. Your brain can't pick up on it yet. Right? Umakifu behelam. But as I said, the muscle that you're going around teaching, right? It's like a lot of people go around, they say, you know what? A little light dispels a lot of darkness. It's like a catchphrase of Hasidus, right? The truth is, you can sit there and learn pages after pages after pages after pages of deep insight as to what it means. A little light dispels a lot of darkness, right? But the reality is, it's all that depth is in that little line, right? That's what it's makif. Only some of it is revealed to the particular, depending who's saying it. But all of the depth is contained in that little line. But it's called makif. It's not all perceived. So even though it's called makif, it's not perceived yet. Which type of makif is it of the two that we've been describing? It's the one that's called close. It's like clothing, because it's not that far from you. Even though this remains in a state of makif, on your brain, you haven't really got the whole depth of it yet. It's only concealed. It's close. In other words, you can keep digging just like the teacher kept digging and find more and more and more depth to that statement that you did understand. As time goes on and you get wiser and brighter and your brain gets bigger and you get more developed, you learn more tools and your Hebrew is better and your concept of Hasidus is better and you're like, Mama's been in yeshiva for a couple of years. When someone says to you, a little light pushes away a lot of darkness, you're like, you have much, much more understanding than you did when you first heard it. The Kamayim, and this is a statement that goes way back to Moshe Rubino. Ad arbaim shanin lo kaim inish adai tidrabe. Right? It says it takes 40 years for you to understand what your rabbi taught you. Meaning to say, it's Moshe Rubino says, Ata reis ladas ki Hashem Elokim. Right? When did Moshe say that? He says, He says, now you see that God is God, right? Now you understand. And he's saying that at the end of the 40-year journey. What, they just went through Mitzrayim, they just saw Har Sinai, Matan Torah, the plagues, the miracles. They didn't know that God was God, right? But after 40 years, it says now they all that like sort of deep mystical stuff that stayed makif to their simple understanding, it finally developed. I've seen in some certain Sfarim, the idea is that when a person turns 40, right? That's also what it means. Like you can't understand your Rav until you reach 40 years old. That's why they used to say that you could learn Kabbalah when you turn 40. And there's many, many things about turning 40 and the number 40, which is like a shleimus, right? It says the Torah was given basically 3 different stages. Moshe went up to the mountain 3 times, 40 days, 40 days, 40 days. And there's all kinds of interesting concepts about reaching the number 40. It's like a completion. It's also the notion of, for example, of the 4 worlds. And each of the world has 10 spheros. So it's like if you want to really unpack the whole thing, you have to go through all the different dimensions. Yud, K, Vav, K. But the reality is even if you just have the little Yud, you have all that 40, you haven't unpacked it yet. We get to the end, after 40 years, it suddenly becomes revealed to you. Obviously, other explanations is you don't understand your Rav's words until after 40 years from hearing them. It doesn't have to do with the age you are, it has to do with having heard the words. It takes 40 years to properly internalize them. If that's the case, it's good news though. You might think it's a long time, but ask the old timers, it goes fast. Right? So he says that after 40 years, it's coming to you. It's called a Makif Rojo. It is a close makif and it's available. It's just not available to you because your kelim are small. But it's not that it's implicitly and intrinsically an unavailable type of light, which is what we're going to explain is true of the distant makif. That's therefore we call it close to you, even though you don't have it yet. Another example of this. Someone who's learning, and he sees and he feels that there's something deeper going on here. In other words, I was learning a Gemara with Yaakov Duncan the other day, and I forget exactly what it was. It would have been much more helpful for this mashal if I did. But it was talking about basically like the brachas of chasanim and kalas and it's like the idea of like yotzer adam. You know, one of the brachas is Yotzer Adam, and then it says Asher Yatzar Adam B'Talmo, right? So of the 7 brachas, which hopefully all of you will soon be hearing under your chuppahs, there's 2 of them that have the word Asher Yatzar, basically Yotzer Adam, Asher Yatzar, and the Gemara goes into this thing and says there's 2 formations of man, right? Because if you go look, it says like he was formed maybe as a one individual, both man and woman, or maybe he was formed 2, that Hashem made 2 creations. Anyway, the point is, we're sitting there looking at these words, and we're both feeling, and he expressed it in words like, this is deep. Like the Gemara is saying something, like talking about the formation of man. There's 2 Yetziras. It's like we're just waiting to like. Does Rebbe have a sikh on that? Where is this in the Kisvi Arizal? You can feel in the middle of learning something that there's a whole depth to this conversation about the formation of it. Even though you don't know it, you just know that it's there. You can sort of feel it. You feel that it's there. Right?
The Faitzer with the 2 yuds.
Yeah, now there's 2 yuds. What is the 2 yuds? Right? And so there's certain things that you come across the idea and you push it, feel that there's a depth to this idea. You don't know what it is, but you know that it's there just by looking at it. The Einu Yodea Mawa Omek. You don't know the depth. Of a margish sheyesh bo omek in you, but you feel that it's deep. Hine be'inyana omek ahu. So this type of depth, even you have absolutely no idea what it is. You didn't read the Sikha yet. You didn't find it in the Kisvi Arizal yet. So long as you see that there's a depth. Gam rak margish, right? Oh, gam rak margish yesh bo omek. Or you just feel that there's a depth, right? Harihu b'chinas karov. That is a sure sign that you're dealing with a makif hakarov. You're dealing with a close makif. You're not talking about the infinite depths of things, right? Another analogy which is often brought out for this, and I think we've discussed it in the previous classes, different classes, is the analogy of the Flintstone versus the coal, right? That in a coal, which is basically sort of burned down to just a glowing ember, right? There's no fire, right? But you can almost sense the fire in it, and the fire is not very hard to get out. It's close to revelation. There's no fire, but if you just give it a little blow, there's a fire, because the hiddenness of it is close to the surface. But you take a Flintstone, which means you bang one stone against another and you pull out a flash of a spark, right? So fire comes out of the stone, but there was no fire in the stone. There was not even close to being fire in the stone. You could put the stone in a mamish, the ocean, in the water, and there's still a little spark in there, because it's so deeply hidden that it's like it's not there, right? So this is the difference. Like you can't, which means you can't even sense that such a depth. I bring you a rock. The last thing you're thinking is there's fire, right? You can't even sense that there's a depth there. Okay. V'zeu makif de'or yasher. That's called the close, the light that's coming towards you, the straight light. Dagam shu b'chinas makif. Now, even though it is makif, and you better believe it, because what we're talking about right now is actually a metaphor for the or ein sof. It's pretty as makif as things can possibly be. You're talking about something which is way, way beyond the comprehension, but it's still called close, because it's at least coming your way. It's Hashem shining to creation, even if not one being in the creation can experience it. It's trying to get to the panimi. It wants to be digested. The F is katseu, harbiz gala. And what's the proof that it wants to be digested? Guess what? A little kav of it, you know where the kav is, right? The kav is this little, the Oriental, it says, was filling the whole Metzias. Remember, before Hashem created the world, it was infinite light. He removed the infinite light, and then he brought back a ray of light. That ray of light fills the world. That ray of light is called, is similar to or synonymous with the or panimi. It's like food, because it becomes a simple line which has edges. You could put it into the body being the worlds can actually contain and be aware of that light. But that light is what? A ray of another light, which is the infinite light. But if that infinite light can contract itself and you can get a ray out of it, then at least the original is something which is relevant to being experienced, right? That's what he says here. Efetz katz. The fact is that if efetz katzeu, which means an edge of nothing of it, like a tiny little ray, harimizgale, it eventually does become revealed, right? Then it's a sure sign that even the parts which you presently don't see will eventually come to be revealed. It's just you don't have a big enough vessel. So again, the point that he's making there is, since the Or Panimi shines out of the Makif HaKarov, right? It's showing you that the Makif HaKarov is relevant to revelation. I knew some of it's shining, even a tiny bit. Certain ideas are just so deep. You know, these are ideas that are just simply, essentially concealed. And you might say, but what do you mean, Rabbi? Right? But the truth of the matter is, we've been talking about this for months, right? And that's why you have heard this analogy of the Flintstone before. Where did we hear the analogy of the Flintstone before? You're raising your hand, just like sort of giving the low salute there. Come on, guys. Where do we hear this idea of there being a spark of fire deeply hidden inside the rock? In context to what? Torah chadasha mi'iti teitzei. Remember that one? A new Torah will come forth from me. What do we say about Moshe Rubino? What do we say about Mashiach Tzidkenu, right? Is that he is a prophet karov LaMoshe, and a chacham yasser mishlomo. He's a prophet like close to Moshe, and he's a wise man greater than Shlomo. Why did he need those two qualities specifically? To teach the Torah Chadasha, mi'iti teitzei? Yes, Moshe.
To be able to bring out things in Torah which regular people or even a tzaddikim could not see.
Thank you. You made my morning, right? So in other words, the regular chidushim, so to speak, when I say regular, I mean like of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and Abai and Rava, right? I call these regular because the Torah that Moshe gave, these great masters with even a human intellect, they were not, we don't call Rabbi Akiva Hanavi, even though he may have in fact had prophetic powers and not taking anything away from him, but that's not how he's known, and that's not what he was there for. He was there to learn with human intelligence and irk out, right, the secret gems that Moshe Rubino hid inside of his Torah, right? But they were obviously close enough to the surface to bring out. So that was like the flame, which was inside of the coal. Yes, it's hidden, but you blow on it with the intellect of Rabbi Akiva, and it will come out. But Torah Chadash Me'ititeitzei, the Mashiach's Torah, we call it says Al Pi Halacha, right? Rambam says, which means it's in the Sefer Halachas. He's a Navi. Why does Mashiach have to be a Navi? What do you need a Navi to be Mashiach for? If his job is to come teach Torah to the whole world, Adarabba, Torah lo b'shamayim hi. Torah is not in heaven. Even if a Navi comes, l'chadesh Torah, you don't even listen to him. Because he's going so deep into the Torah that he's finding things that are like this. Who nelam be'etzam. They're not able to be seen. Gam efetz katseyu einu misgala. Not even a ray of it. Not even a contraction of a contraction of a contraction. No, not for you. It cannot be. It's God. That's what I'm saying. Even to God, they're in a state of absence of revelation, and therefore they have to come out from a prophetic level of the Torah. No human intellect can get their hands on this information. You need it to be produced by divinity itself. And so this is called the deep idea that cannot even come out. Yeah.
Doesn't it say in the Torah that there's no that there will never be a prophet greater than Moshe?
Yes, and the way that that's understood in the Hasidic teachings is that's also going on what it says in the Zohar, is pashtusa de Moshe b'chol dara v'dara. That there's something called the extension of Moshe in every single generation, and there is this notion that Moshe Rubino lo meis, right, or lo meis Moshe. It says in the Gemara of Sota, right, that Moshe did not die, right. This is actually a statement of the sages, and in Chassidus it kind of brings clarity to that statement, meaning that the Nasi Hador, or what the Rebbe called here in chapter 11, it says the Metzias of the Neshama of Atzilus. He said that there's such a thing called Chad Bedara Afil Bedoras Harishonos. This is the quoting of the Basi Lgani in chapter 11. He says that even in the early generations, there was only one a generation. And the Rebbe adds in later on, he says, how much more so in our generation? There's only one that has what's called a neshama of Atzilus. And Mistama, this one, is what the Zohar is talking about when it says that there's an extension of Moshe in every generation. It also means the same thing when it says Moshe, lo meis Moshe. Moshe didn't die. That when we said there was never a prophet like Moshe, we mean it. But Moshe has been prophesizing since Har Sinai until today, right? So anybody else, yeah, they're not a prophet like Moshe. But everyone in their generation who was Moshe, then they don't have to be. They're prophesying like Moshe because they were Moshe.
And does the same go for Shlomo?
Yeah. Sure, he was Shlomo. Anyway, all the kings, pretty much, I think, without exception. There might be some exceptions in terms of some wicked kings, but like the righteous kings of Israel, they held that position. But if you want to know a complete list of the people who held that position, it actually the Rambam in the beginning of the Mishnah Torah, name by name, he lists 40 generations of who was the man, like who's Moshe Kibel Torah Mitzina Umasrua, right? He gave it over to Yeshua, and then that giving over was that there was someone who received the tradition. It's like a mystical handbook. That beginning of the Rambam, he tells you who received the mystical tradition, name after name. It says Yoshua and his based in, and Eli and his based in, and Shmuel and his based in, and he names the names and they're based in. That is the line, right? Okay, so where were we, my friends? So this idea is essentially hidden, right? Unlike what we said before, not here, not even a kav, not even a what's called efes katseu is a strong terminology, which means like an array, an edge of nothing, like which at least you have an edge of nothing, right? No, here, how would you translate Reb Baruch efes katseu? I was. Edge of nothing works for you? So an edge of nothing is a funny statement because how can you have an edge of nothing? But the point is that like there's something to be discussed there, right? There's some sliver of a sliver where we're saying here, not even a sliver of a sliver, an edge of nothing is going to be available.
Because nothing can become something.
There you go. It makes sense.
You see, so
It's already
at
the
this state, it's FS,
right.
but it's conceal. It's like it's the end. It's like it's not the middle of the FS. It's like at the end of the FS.
Okay.
What's at the end of the FS? Low FS.
Right. I like that. Yeah, it's the end, the edge of nothing, which is brimming into something. Okay, that's cool.
Philadelphia Hasidus.
That is. It's a Philly Chassid right there. But Kamo Chachma Shlomo. Who mentioned Shlomo? Like Chachma Shlomo. To conceive, Hashem nasan Chachma l'Shlomo kasher diber lo. It says Hashem gave wisdom to Shlomo as he said it, as he spoke to him. Hainu sheniten lo hadeya helyona mamish mashu l'mayla migener asagas hivroim. Whoa, right? This is what he's saying is that, remember we talked about this, you guys. In the end of the Rambam, it says that Kol Yisrael Yom Chachamim Gedolim Yodim Das Boram. We spoke about this when we learned the Rambam, the end of the Rambam together. What does it mean, Das Boram? They're going to know the knowledge of their Creator. Does that mean they're going to learn Torah? What does it mean to learn the knowledge of their Creator? So I don't know if you remember this, but we spoke about the idea of Keil Deos Hashem. There's two. It's in the song of, or the prayer of Hannah, right? She says that God is a God of knowledge. Keil, which is God, Deos, a God of knowledge. But it picks up, why does it say Deos? Why does it say Keil Dea? Because Deos means two knowledges, or another way of putting it is two opinions. Because when you say to someone, what's your Dea, it means what's your opinion. So it turns out Hashem is a God of two opinions. What are the two opinions? One opinion is our, so to speak, what we experience, which is what? The world is created, Yesh Mi'ayin. That we are a something, and he is called a nothing, even though we know that he's there, but we have no perception of him. And so therefore we call him nothing, and we call ourselves something, because we're sure that we're here, and we're sure that he's there, but we just don't know what it is, so we just call it nothing. What is God's perspective of the same event, just looking from the other direction? He calls this world Ayin Miyesh, because he is there, right? He's God, and this, that it looks like we're here, as we've been learning all through since we met each other, right? This creation is not what it looks like. It's just like a contraction of infinite light, so that smaller particles can be made out to be seen as something, but of course the infinite light is still encompassing them and shining in them, and they don't really have an existence except for in their own minds, right? And so that's called, the world is really nothing from something. So that's called, so to speak, Hashem's opinion. And look what it says here. Hashem gave Chochmah to Shlomo as he said he would, and he says here that means he gave him the Deya HaElyona. He gave him Hashem's opinion, right? He was so wise, mamish, to add on to that, right? That's not enough. Mamish, he gave him Hashem's opinion, which means what is above the comprehension of created beings to perceive. And we're using this therefore as an analogy for the light that can never be known, right? The gam efes katseu enu miskale. Not even an edge of nothing of Shlomo's light could really be seen. Liolam lo yavo yedei gili mamish. It will never come to be seen. Hine askalos elu baim ayde levushim ha'malim mastirim kmo mashalim v'achidos. And so, what these types of ideas, right? They come out in what's called garments that conceal. And that is why Shlomo was famously known to write a book called Mishle, which means garments. I mean, it means metaphors, right? What are metaphors? Metaphors, like a Mishle means like mashali, like a mashal, right? So he was the king of the mashal. Because what is a mashal? It's basically, it's actually taking something and hiding it in something else. Right? So I really want to talk to you about the Or Ein Sof, but instead I'm talking to you about rocks and sparks, right? Because I'm going to take an idea, I'm going to hide it inside of a mashal. And riddles, right? Because you can't really say such a thing straightforwardly, right? It doesn't come, if you would try to explain it, I'll give you an example. It says, we're living in Sfas, might as well use our own examples over here. It says that in Parshas Bilam, Parshas Balak, it says that the Arizal went down and had a little Shabbos nap. right? And when he woke up, he slept for an hour or two. It says he had a vision that would have taken him, according to different opinions, how long, but like some say at least 80 years, if he would speak consecutively without stopping his mouth from talking to explain what he saw, right? So this is the idea that how are you going to, if, let's say he wants to tell you, right? No, I really want to tell you. You have 80 years? I don't have 80 years, Rabbi. So what can I do? So you know what? Then I'll write a page of the Eitz Chaim, and I'll put it in some kind of a mashal, and I'll give it to you. Right? So it doesn't mean that you have any of it, right? It would take 80 years consecutively for you to understand what I'm saying. And not even a ray of light comes out of this. But I can still sort of put it in a mushal and hand it over to you, because it's almost like a zip drive, right? If I give you like a zip drive, here, right? Take this one from me, please. And you're holding this little thing in your hand. You might have the entire Library of Congress in your hand, but you don't even have a ray of information in your mind, right? Because you can put the whole thing into a zip drive and take it, right? But that's a concealing element. It does not reveal anything. A mushal doesn't reveal. It actually hides something inside of it. Now you can sit there and we can learn Mishlei all day long, and we can start to unearth mushal after mushal and try and get understanding from it. But we might not even be touching upon the same type of information that's actually in that 80 years worth of information the Arizal wanted to tell us. We're just, like we said before, we're taking human minds and sort of like accessing some limited information, but it doesn't even begin to touch what's actually contained in the infinite realm of what that idea actually bears. Right? It would only take like a godly knowledge and it's something super beyond the mind of man to actually unearth what the mushal is actually holding, what the zip drive really contains. In these mashalim, you don't even realize that there's wisdom inside of them. They're very simple things. Like the analogies of Shlomo, that when you read Mishlei, it's like, stay away from a wayward woman, right? It's like, wow, King Solomon, the wisest man in the world. Where would I have figured this out without him, right? They don't come as packages of deep intellect. They're just like simple mushals, you know what I mean? We do know some of the meanings and the secret depths, but from where? From the Midrashim and Chazal. Ruach HaKodesh, right? And why is he saying that from Ruach HaKodesh? Because this is not like what I said before about Rabbi Akiva. He was just using human intellect. Even Rabbi Akiva's human intellect would not have gotten one drop out of Shlomo's Mashalim. But if they're going to start using Ruach HaKodesh, fine. So if Hashem wants to reveal some of his secrets to the mind of man, he can do it. Ma'at michochma, right? Only a drop was this revealed by the Midrashim, even through Ruach HaKodesh, from this wisdom and these mashalim, right? So whatever we think we know about Mishlei, and even we do know some actual deep secrets in there, it was only a tiny little bit that the sages were, with Ruach HaKodesh, allowed to take out of that. But that's only if you learn the Midrashim of the Chazal. Suddenly, like, you see it. But if you just learn the mashal on your own, without someone giving you the secret code to how to unlock the zip drive, you would never know that there's any wisdom in there at all. And also, what do you think? Avram Avinu is just going and burying his wife Sarah. That's the information that God is telling us. That's mamish like holding up the essence of creation with the Torah of God. No, all the stories of the Torah are mashalim, and just like, in fact, the Torah itself is called what? Mashal HaKadmoni, right? The Torah calls itself the primordial mashal. Every letter in there is a mashal. What's a mashal? Something you don't understand. You don't understand a little bit of it. You don't understand a ray of it. You don't understand efes katseyu, not even the edge of nothing of it, right? The whole Torah, all the stories of the Torah like this. And the Torah essentially is one big story. Yesh bim sodos v'razim niloin harbe yos mekamodini haTorah. There's way deeper secrets hidden in there than just the laws of the Torah, right? It's amazing already that the laws of the Torah come out of the Torah, right? I mean, it's crazy. It says, Mimoshe v'ad, was just by the Rambam yesterday. It says, Mimoshe v'ad Moshe lo kam kamoshe, right? from Moshe Rubino until Moshe ben Maimon, no one stood. Why? Because Moshe ben Maimon came and pulled a Shulchan Aruch out of the Chumash. How'd you do that? Right? Where'd you see all these laws in this book? I'm reading the same book. I didn't see them. So that's amazing, right? That the laws of the Torah are secretly concealed inside of the Torah. But he says here, that's nothing, right? There's much, much deeper secrets hidden inside of the Torah than just merely the Shulchan Aruch and the whole way of Jewish life. But you just can't make it out. You don't know that it's there. It's because this here's your line. Yisrael. It's because the essence of the light, right? Which is not the light that shines, it's the light that's inside and one with the Atzmus itself. It's a sod sasum, it's a hidden secret, and it never comes to Giloy, rak al de hester behelim. Oh, it can come to Giloy, but only in a package which you don't understand, like a mushroom. He says it never comes to Giloy except through concealment. What does he mean by that? It means certain things come to Giloy, like I'll tell you a piece of Torah and you get it. But this, if I want to reveal the essential wisdom, I'm going to tell you something that you don't understand, a mushroom. So it does come to Giloy. It just comes to Giloy in a package which you don't understand because it is incomprehensible. Therefore, the thing it comes and shows itself in is is equally incomprehensible.
Would an example for this be like the Yechida? We say like the Yechida of having a Shema is like the Atzma Har, right?
Yeah.
It's like Atzmus or whatever. Whatever. So you have this revelation of the Atzma Har in every Yid.
Okay.
But they don't it's not in a way that they feel it. They feel it like they have no beginning. And they feel like they're self-perceiving.
Right.
They have all these attributes of what the Atzma Har, the Chalal, the Atzmus is.
Right.
But it's not in a way of viewing.
Right. On the contrary, wait, I want to point out, you said something very, very brilliant right now, right? I want to remind him what you said at the Bima for a second, because I'm still meditating on it. He said that when a person throws a ball, right, or like say a great pitcher, you can see that this is like, I don't know any pitchers' names, but that's what is it? That's Koufax's curveball, man. You can see the way it spins, the height, the speed. You can tell about the owner of the power from the power that comes out. Similarly, we have two qualities inside of us which are stunningly creator-like. One is we don't feel like we have a beginning, right? Can you remember before you were here, right? It's a weird phenomenon. And two is that we have an I, right? We feel like we're the center of the universe. Everything basically revolves around me. I hate to be arrogant about it, but that's how I see it, right? I don't know what it looks like from your eyes. Right? I don't know what it looks like, but you only see everything from your eyes. But that's a crazy thing because we all have this little piece of the creator where we feel what he feels. He is truly has the only I and everything revolves around him. And he's like the central figure in the whole story. But we all feel that way. So he put the Sandy Koufax pitch into us. We feel how he feels. However, to your point, not only do we not pick up on that, the way that we have that is hepech ha'inyan mamish. We feel like the world revolves around us. It's the opposite of truth. So the fact that he gave us this essential godly power, he gave it in a mushel, in a package, which looks like the most hidden, ridiculous, false thing on earth. Because instead of realizing the true oneness is him, we think I'm the one, right? So it's exactly what we're saying here. The essence only reveals itself by hiding in the strangest places.
But I just want to say, I'm a descendant of the Dubner Maggid, and that said he would teach everything through Mishalim.
Who?
The Dubner Maggid.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's it.
Well,
you just all day you just say Mishalim.
Just Mishalim.
You think you're just saying a story, and no, you're just really teaching these two.
It's like Rabbi Nachman's stories, you know.
Yeah.
There's no perush on them; it's just the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So if that like what we said that Hashem gives us this feeling of the our decisive the atzim, but it's like muted to a point where it becomes the hefa. That gilu is not the yechida.
I only say not yechida because the Rebbe in the later years started to point out there's 5 names to the soul: nefesh, ruach, neshama, chay, and yechida, which means even the yechida is just a name.
Right. So is the yechida.
Etzem and neshama. Right? The pnimis of the yechida. Okay, fine. If you want, because no, seriously, there's levels.
Yeah, we learned that sikha of Shaman.
Okay.
When that says
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
You can't put a name on the Etzim.
And if you think about it for a second, what does the 5 levels correspond to? The 4 worlds and the Kesser. So the Yechid is Kesser. Well, Kesser has many levels. Primarily, it has 3 levels, right? Which is Arich, Atik, and Pnimius Atik. So even Pnimius of Yechida is not, it's the Pnimius of the Pnimius of Yechida that we're talking about right now. It's the level of, the 3rd highest level of the Kesser, the Pnimius of Atik. And that you could say is slightly synonymous with the Atzmus.
Oh, by itself fitting together.
Nice. All right, let's hold here. We did quite a doozy for the day. Shkoyach.
That was so good, Rabbi. Great class.